Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness and back, we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life, it is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Retired U.S. Magistrate Judge J. David Orlansky, a man whose journey stretched 94 years, a husband, a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, a leader in this community and in other communities, a presence in his synagogue, and a friend to many. He journeyed through the seasons of a full life, with strength, with love, with dignity. And now his path has reached its sacred destination. For those who remain, words cannot carry the weight of grief. Tears speak what the heart cannot say, but in our sorrow, O God, we ask you to hold this family in love, to shelter them in memory, to grant them peace.
Mourning is always a time filled with many contradictory emotions, bitter, sweet. And for thousands of years, our people have turned to the words of the Psalms for expression and comfort in times of pain and loss. So we continue our service now with the recitation of some of these ancient words, thus linking David's life with the 3,000-year tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. Please join me in reciting the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rock the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
In his sorrow, Job cried out, God has given, God has taken away, blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of the shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai Natan, God gives. And God, you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks. Adonai Lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love. As we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever. We take a few moments for silent prayer. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. I now invite the first of our Chesped speakers, Steve Orlansky.
Thank you, Rabbi Kassoff, and thank you to both Rabbi Kassoff and Rabbi Russell for putting together such a beautiful service for us today, especially considering the liturgical restrictions imposed upon you from beyond. Even now, the judge's influence is felt. On behalf of David's children, Larry, Linda, and myself, I want to thank you all for coming today to honor the memory of our father, a man that many of you knew simply as the judge. In recent days, we've received moving messages from friends and acquaintances far and near, people on whom the judge clearly made a positive impact. We've heard references to his being one of the greatest men I ever met, a Delta treasure. This morning, during visitation, several of the lawyers who were so gracious to join us today told me about the influence he had had on their careers. One in particular, one of the most highly respected lawyers in the state of Mississippi, actually broke into tears as he talked of the influence the judge had had on his career. Heady stuff. But we also know from candid, confidential comments we've heard over the years, and from our own experiences, that the judge could at times be intimidating, a bit harsh, unpleasant to deal with. So yeah, the judge was complicated. I don't think I can clarify much this morning, but I would like to share a few of my own observations and a couple of stories to try to fill out the picture. The judge was indisputably a very smart man. He was extremely well read on a broad range of subjects. At the time of his death, a 1,000-page biography of Mark Twain sat at the top of a tall stack of books next to his chair, 25 pages from completion. When the judge spoke, people tended to listen because he sounded like he knew what he was talking about, and he did. He was a commanding public speaker. And just a month ago, he proved that he still had it. Unable to travel to Colorado for the wedding of his grandson Joshua to the newly minted Megan Posner, he recorded a toast to be played by video at the rehearsal dinner. I had the privilege of taking him to the videographer's office for the recording here in Jackson, and he accomplished it in a single take. It should be noted, though, that the recording was delayed somewhat by the judge's demand that the videographer first remove a painting hanging in the background of the room that he apparently thought unworthy of sharing the screen with him. When the video was played at the rehearsal dinner in a beautiful outdoor setting framed by the Rocky Mountains, the mostly young audience was absolutely captivated by this 94-year-old rock star, speaking with such confidence and clarity. 30 years after leaving the bench, the judge was still holding court. Now, the judge was never known as a patient man. Many people have remarked that he did not suffer fools gladly. That is certainly true as far as it goes, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Because you see, to truly understand the judge, you have to recognize that for him, pretty much everyone was a fool. Now, there was the rare exception. Near the end of his last week in the hospital, the judge declared that a therapist who had just seen him was the first person in this hospital who knew what she was doing. She had proven that to him in the way that most appealed to the judge, by agreeing with everything he said. Another thing one hoping to understand the judge needs to know is that he loved him some Ole Miss Rebels. Despite having been a member of the renowned Golden Band from Tigerland, bum, 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 during his years at LSU, he went over to the dark side during his first year of law school at Ole Miss. That fall, the Rebel football team, coached by young Johnny Vaught, made national headlines by beating Maryland. Yes, there was actually a time back in 1952 when beating Maryland was a big deal. And the young judge-to-be was hooked. He and Shirley had picnics in the Grove back when the highway between Batesville and Oxford was 2 lanes, and you could actually drive your car up into the Grove to set up your picnic. The judge had season tickets to Ole Miss and football and basketball games for decades. Eventually, he had to give up his football tickets because he could no longer negotiate the stadium steps. But he and I continued to attend basketball games together every year, including as recently as this past March. And get this, after his retirement from the bench at about the same age of 70 that I am now, the judge actually attended an Ole Miss adult basketball camp and brought home what was undoubtedly the most ridiculous picture ever taken of him in full game uniform. Try getting that image out of your mind. You should also know that the judge was a patriot. He loved this country. As the son of immigrants who had been denied religious freedom and economic opportunities in Russian-controlled Lithuania and had found new opportunities here in America. He was deeply honored to serve in the federal judiciary and took his responsibilities as a judge very seriously. As a lawyer and a judge, he came to understand that the freedoms we enjoy in this country have been protected by the rule of law and our constitutional system of checks and balances, which have prevented one branch of government from dominating the others and have promoted moderation and compromise. The judge died deeply concerned that those protections are being eroded in our country today. Now, the judge was no alarmist, far from it. He dealt in facts and was coldly analytical. If he was concerned, and he was, we should be too. I want to turn now to the subject nearest and dearest to the judge's heart, his family. And of course, we start with his wife of 64 years, Sweet Shirley, as he referred to her on her gravestone. He called her the best decision of his life, and he was more correct than even he realized. She was the sweetness and grace that contrasted with his often stern demeanor and was undoubtedly the reason that they got as many social invitations as they did. Shirley's death in 2018 hit him hard. From that time until his own death this week, He kept fresh flowers on her gravestone and placed roses beside her portrait in their home on their anniversary, her birthday, and Valentine's Day. My favorite story of the judge as father involves, not surprisingly, an Ole Miss football game. This one against Georgia in Jackson in 1968. The judge, who was not yet a judge but then a practicing lawyer, had promised Larry and me he would take us to that game. But during the week, a business client became involved in a dispute that required Dad to secure a temporary restraining order against the client's franchisor. The lawyers in the room know that the issuance of a TRO is followed closely by the setting of a hearing for a preliminary injunction. And in that case, Judge William Cady set a hearing on the preliminary injunction for Saturday. Dad contacted Judge Cady, who, by the way, later appointed him as the first U.S. Magistrate Judge in the Northern District of Mississippi, along with another outstanding judge, Judge Orma Smith. Dad explained to Judge Cady that he had promised to take his boys to the game, and Judge Cady, being the kind-hearted man he was, in addition to being a great judge, accommodated him by setting the hearing for 8 o'clock Saturday morning. I'm sure counsel opposite was not amused. Well, Dad presented his case in record time, was granted the preliminary injunction, and we made it from Greenville to Jackson in time for the game. And that game turned out to be one of Archie Manning's most memorable, as he returned from injury in the second half to lead Ole Miss to a comeback victory. You remember the game? Now, I don't want to step on the toes of Adam and Joshua, who will speak next on behalf of the grandchildren, but for both the grandchildren and the great-grands, the judge will be remembered for a most unjudge-like pose, what we call the die face. Die being his grandfather and great-grandfather nickname bestowed upon him by Abram at the age of 3? Yeah. The die face involved his sticking out his tongue to form a large upper lip and rolling his lower lip to enlarge it. There he is. Sam is demonstrating. Show the audience, Sam. Stand up. Well done. I should mention that in Dad's den is a picture of Dad, and then I would say 3. Was he? She corrected me on 3 earlier. Was he 3 then? In a series of shots of each doing the die face. We're going to fight over that picture. It was almost as ridiculous as the Ole Miss basketball uniform, but the kids loved it and competed among themselves to see who could produce the best die face of their own generation. So as I told you at the start, the judge was complicated. But this much isn't. Our dad, the judge, was a dedicated family man and respected jurist who modeled for his children a work ethic that has served all of us well. He lived a full life of almost 95 years in remarkably good health until just recently. And we are grateful for that long and impactful life, and that he is now at peace and no longer suffering. Rest well, Dad. Hotty toddy.
Adam Orlansky, or whichever one of you is ready to go next. Oh, you're coming together. Come on up.
Thank you, Steve, for those incredible words, and I don't think we'll be able to top them, but
do our best.
yeah. The man whose life we are celebrating today is known by many names. J. David Orlansky, David, the judge, and Judge Orlansky, to name a few.
To us, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, as Steve mentioned, we affectionately call him by a name that was given to him by, well, we were told an 18-month-old Abram. I guess that's up for debate. At the time, pointed to everything as Dad. And as soon as he pointed to our grandfather, calling out Dad, it was clear that that name would stick. My name's Adam Orlansky, and again, thank you everyone for being here today.
And my name's Joshua Posner. As Steve mentioned, we're 2 of Dad's 8 grandchildren. We are honored to be able to represent our generation in sharing our memories of our quintessential patriarch who left an incredible legacy. And it must be noted, never wore a pair of jeans in his entire life. On the note of clothing, you'll see all of us today representing Dad in one of many ways, but one of them is by honoring him by wearing each of his ties from his closet that were shared with us yesterday evening. So apologize for Adam's pattern, but.
Dad, as our grandfather, taught and showed us so much. Joshua and I were both picky eaters growing up as kids, but our entire generation felt connected to the man through food. Of course, living in Greenville, Mississippi, for so much of his life, Doe's Eat Place became the most iconic restaurant in our family lore. While everyone knows the steaks were the showstopper at this legendary establishment, Dad once quipped, the garlic toast, in addition to being very tasty on its own, is essential for mopping up any remaining juices and sauces from the steak and the shrimp.
Dad wasn't only a savory man. He was arguably more passionate about desserts, his favorite of which was creme brulee. Another gem when describing the proper preparation for Benji, who would later serve as a waiter at a fine dining establishment in Chicago.
A good creme brulee has a warm sugar crust that's slightly burnt and a cool custard beneath. If the crust isn't warm, then they just pulled it out of a cooler, which means they're either lazy or don't know what they're doing.
Maybe this insight helped Benji land that job.
The man always remembered his fine dining experiences, especially with his beloved Mina. And yet, his fondest memories of dining and food appeared to be when he got to share in this passion with his grandchildren. One of our favorite examples was Shayna's execution on her pumpkin cinnamon rolls the day after Thanksgiving a couple years ago. The next morning, as Dad sat and watched Shayna prep the dough and form the cinnamon rolls, all while asking questions about the ingredients and technique, as we know how detail-oriented he was. Once they were finished and he had his plate, he sat down, took a bite, and with a smile on his face remarked, "Well, Shayna, congratulations on the cinnamon rolls." After finishing his plate and excusing himself to go back to his room, he turned back around and said, "Shayna, congratulations again on the cinnamon rolls." This story is an excellent illustration of how Dad took such a genuine interest in all of his grandchildren's passions and the joy he experienced when he had the opportunity to participate with them.
For some in the family, that was cooking or baking. For many others, one of our biggest interests, whether fostered independently or through his own passions, was sports. Dad ensured to cultivate core memories with any grandchild that showed interest by taking us, sometimes together, to the SEC basketball tournament. We sat through many late-night games that we were never allowed to leave early from, and while that ethos can be thought of as a good metaphor for life or fandom, it can also be life-saving, as Aaron can attest, as they survived a tornado that ripped through the Georgia Dome while sitting through the Alabama versus Mississippi State game that is now covered in an ESPN 30 for 30. Regardless of the circumstance, we were always thrilled to be with him and him with us, as our own passion for sports grew. Even though he did not care much for LSU, he was always happy to enjoy their wins with us. After a big win, he once said to Adam,
"How about a celebratory Dove bar?" Which, of course, I took him up on. Sports provided entertainment and a common language to bind our generations. Yet, at the core of it all, Dad's guiding light was Mina. Together, they built a family that we are deeply proud to be a part of and represent. A family that Dad also took immense pride in collectively, and for each individual, child, grandchild, and great-grandchild.
For the Jackson Orlanskys, that pride and attentiveness arrived a little early at the Camellia Drive door in Greenville when Abram, Johnny, and Benji were growing up. As the story goes, Dad ordered a pizza to be delivered for the kids while the adults went out to dinner. The requested delivery time was around 7 p.m., but somehow Domino's didn't understand and processed the pizza delivery early, so it arrived immediately around 4:45. Dad refused to accept the pizzas, telling the guy to go away and come back with fresh pizzas at the requested time. All the adults told him it was fine, he should just accept the pizza, but he was adamant and sent the kid on his way. In hindsight, Johnny believes Dad was in the right. Speaking of Johnny, one family legend goes that Dad was informed about Johnny's birth because of the Ole Miss PA announcer booming, "Judge and Miss Orlansky, please report to University Hospital in Jackson. You have a new grandson," in the middle of the Ole Miss Tulane game in Oxford. They immediately got in the car and drove down to Jackson, missing the end of the game. Ole Miss won 35-10.
I had the cherished opportunity to live in Jackson for a couple years as an adult and spend time with Mina and Dad during their later years. I recall one afternoon being at the house. Dad and I were standing outside, and we saw his neighbor across the street. He was a high school kid that they had got to know him. I believe he would help him with cutting the grass and various tasks around the house. And Dad really wanted to introduce me to this kid. I think he was a baseball player, which came up in the conversation. And then Dad said that I, his grandson, could really hit the ball back in the day. The kid would say something else, probably on a different subject, and all Dad could talk about was my baseball skills. It was almost to the point where it was awkward, and I was certainly starting to feel uncomfortable, but I could tell how proud he was of me, seeing the look in his eye, bragging about his grandson, and I know that all of us grandchildren have all felt that way with Dad at many points.
For the Posners, that pride has manifested in many ways. He was one of the first people I spoke with about my excitement to date, then Megan Hustana, and my enthusiasm was only matched by his in eventually welcoming Megan to our family as Megan Posner just last month. Dad was so interested in Aaron's work helping children with autism, ever curious and always attentive. For Rachel, only Dad would read Doctoring the Decisions, a statistical and textual analysis of the evolving role medical providers in the U.S. Supreme Court abortion cases through amicus curiae participation. Yes, he read all 117 pages with follow-up questions.
One of the many lasting legacies of Dad is his curiosity and insatiable passion for travel. While Mina and Dad were not able to travel often as young parents, once he retired from the bench, they were able to explore the world together. And each of us have unique travel memories with them. For instance, Shayna and Rachel traveling to Williamsburg with their American Girl dolls. Please, everyone, imagine J. David Orlansky having a tea party, surrounded by dozens of little girls and their Felicity dolls. And he did this twice.
The most notable travel experience for the Orlansky grandchildren is undoubtedly the 50th anniversary cruise to Alaska. It will surprise no one that Mina and Da had already done that exact cruise, vetting it for the enjoyment of the various age demographics that would participate later on. During that trip around our 49th state, many of us recall the remarkable views, the delicious baked Alaskas, and learning how to play poker from our older cousins. Most importantly, we were together as a family.
Dad's favorite trip was a short and brief one. In 2010, to celebrate his 80th birthday, the family decided to return where it all began, Greenville, Mississippi. We visited the then new and as he described it, magnificent bridge over the Mississippi River in Greenville. And it is a pretty magnificent bridge. We went to the house on Camellia Drive, and of course, a memorable meal at Doe's with the classic order: tamales, porterhouse, broiled and fried shrimp, and of course, the garlic bread. The porterhouse bones were of course stored and enjoyed at home. As an aside, he used to make the excuse that the bone was not for him, but for his beloved cat, Blackie, who we should note hated every living thing on the planet except Dad. Maybe for this reason. This was of course not true, as his real intentions were to gnaw at the bone when no one else was around. Regardless, what made that trip to Greenville memorable was not the architectural masterpieces or the visits to the courthouse, but the family that accompanied him.
During my time in Jackson, Dad provided me the guidance and friendship during the early part of my career. He and I developed a bond that went beyond just grandfather and grandson. Dad became my best friend, and our weekly dinners provided a cherished experience that will live with me forever.
My wife Blair and I welcomed our first child, Miles, into the world 3 months ago. Miles was Dad's most recent great-grandchild, and the only one that he's never gotten to meet. And as we were hoping he would get the chance to do so later this year at Thanksgiving. And while they never got to meet in person, we certainly FaceTimed and sent him many pictures, and Dad was always enamored with him. I'm so glad that he was able to see me become a father, even if they never got to meet in person. I know he was proud of me, and he was genuinely proud of the successful adults, role models, parents that his grandchildren have become.
Our dad has passed to what is next, yet these memories and feelings will always stay with us. He had so much wisdom, experience, and passions to share with whoever knew him. We are also lucky that not only do we get to carry these memories figuratively, but also literally. A collection of life stories provides the small essays that explore our grandfather from questions that were curated by his children and grandchildren. All of us have a copy and cherish it deeply. It not only serves as a physical token to remind us of Dad, but also helps us remember him in the way that he'd want to be remembered, through his words.
Dad, we love you,
We miss you.
and we hope to continue making you proud.
I've been asked to say a few words about my relationship with Judge Orlansky in Greenville as his rabbi 25 years ago. I first met the judge on my first visit to Greenville. I had drawn a favorable number in the student pulpit lottery at Hebrew Union College, and I chose our namesake, Hebrew Union Temple, a gem in the Mississippi Delta, for several reasons, not least among them was the fact that the congregation had just wished its last full-time rabbi farewell. Hebrew Union was a vibrant, full-service congregation with abundant opportunities for learning from and teaching congregants of all ages, and I wanted to learn. As I sat with my dinner host that Friday afternoon and having heard about how important food was to David, which I should have intuited from a number of things, but I don't think I fully appreciated until just now. I was taken to doze, not by Da, but that's a story for another time. But I'm sitting there with another member of the board preparing for a command appearance before the ritual committee, which was scheduled between our Erev Shabbat meal and the service. This was going to be my first service at Temple, Hebrew Union Temple. And I was beginning to question the wisdom of my choice to go there. Don't be nervous, my host advised. They just want to make sure you're the right kind of rabbi for us. Don't be nervous, I thought. The right kind of rabbi. And what if they determine I'm not the right kind of rabbi? Hebrew Union congregation had a history as a proud classical Reform congregation, high pulpit, higher than this, pipe organ, stained glass, fixed pews, and members who could trace their ancestry in the region back 4 or 5 generations or more. It couldn't be more different from the Reform congregations I was most familiar with. And all of this I already knew walking in. The ritual committee, I had been informed, consisted of the 2 judges, Greenville Municipal Judge Earl Solomon Jr., whose family did reach back 4 or 5 generations in Greenville, and United States Magistrate Judge J. David Orlansky, who I would learn later shared with me a Lithuanian ancestry. I won't report the exact words spoken by a certain member of David's family when I told them the story of Judge Orlansky's role in my experience with Greenville's Hebrew Union Congregation Ritual Committee. Something to do with Vladimir Putin and Democracy Committee. It takes a minute to... I can't remember. Well, the exact questions have been coming back to me. I remembered as I was sitting here listening to you that one of the questions almost certainly was, do you know what the true religion of this congregation is? And the answer was Ole Miss football. And there was a time when Judge Solomon was listening to the football game during High Holy Day services. I don't remember that being true of Judge Orlansky. I think he had the decorum to wait until after the service. Another one definitely had something to do with how much Hebrew I planned to use in my service. I was not sent packing back to Cincinnati that evening by some miracle. But this served as my introduction both to the congregation and to Judge Orlansky, and to the idea that in some cases, despite 1,000 punchlines to the contrary, sometimes there is just one right answer to a Jewish question. The stories from David's many years of service, both as president and in many other positions on the temple board, are univocal. When a difficult question arose, I was told, we turned to Judge Orlansky. He was the judge, notwithstanding there were 2 of them. He always had the correct answer. How can this be? We know no one is without error. No one is right all the time. But he was always fair, I was told. He always had the good of the community at heart. Judge Orlansky, it has been written, could present as rather humorless, but his stern public persona concealed a deeper truth. David knew his mind. He had an opinion for everything. He could argue his position with impeccable skill and logic. He was meticulous in his work, whether that work was on the bench or in the boardroom, and his peers valued him highly for this quality, however they might have groused about board meetings that ran long because of it. Meanwhile, he reveled in the debate. David loved a good argument, well presented, and I believe he found amusement in the use of one to delay and discomfit his less particular lay leader colleagues, even as he found satisfaction in a job done right. And the joke was truly on everyone who despised the delay but could not bring themselves to leave Orlansky's ruling lying on the table. Who doesn't, after all, want the job done right? Leviticus 19:5 reads, "You must not pervert justice, you must not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the rich. You are to judge your neighbor fairly." This is the text that comes most strongly to mind as I remember Judge Orlansky. And I'm pausing because I'm not sure that it's not at first sight a really remarkable text, but for me, it is one of the most radical in our tradition. You must not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the rich. You're to judge your neighbor fairly. Impartial justice is not always popular. It can be difficult to swallow, but it is also hard to come by, and all the more precious for its scarcity. David embodied this ideal. His devotion to Judaism and Jewish community had to do with other things as well: love of family, of legacy, of the way ritual helps structure memory, his love of community. But our tradition's commitment to justice, to clear, impartial analysis of a situation resonated with something in David's core. I remember the last time I saw David, we had lunch together at one of his favorite restaurants in Ridgeland, and he asked me questions about international affairs and politics. Some of these I had no basis for answering and said as much, but others I gave my best attempt. He knew more than I on every topic we addressed that day, but he also knew that my perspective and my body of knowledge was different than his. And while I'm pretty sure his view of the world came out unchanged, he was intent on hearing mine. He was a learner for the sake of learning. Torah lishma, we call that. Sorry, David, Hebrew. Even if he knew he was right. A man of such strong tastes and principles who saw the Jewish world transform itself over the course of his life may have hardened his views with time. It can be difficult for any of us not to become set in our ways, especially if one's so often right. But the legacy J. David Orlansky leaves behind, the communities he shaped, the family he raised, the 3 generations of diverse, deeply engaged Jews he lived to see emerge from his union with Shirley. All of this suggests a soul who understood that change is inevitable and very occasionally even good, just as tradition, preservation of the old ways, can also be good. It was in this spirit ultimately that he and his colleague got themselves on the ritual committee and received the new student rabbi. And it is in this rigorous, argumentative, delightfully frustrating, and clarifying spirit that Judge Orlansky will live on, not only in the memory of his beloved family, but far beyond in the community here in Jackson and in Greenville and across the South for generations to come.
the Honorable J. David Orlansky, or as I didn't know him as the judge, just Judge Orlansky, but I wish I had actually called him just the judge. He was a man of deep feeling and firm beliefs. He had a strong sense of what mattered to him, to tradition, and to justice. He had a deep affection, as we discussed this weekend, he had a deep affection for the Union Prayer Book. And when we finished talking the other day, I came back to the office and I pulled out the Union Prayer Book. I had to go hunting for it. Because the English, as we talked with the family, the English poetry found in that was something that he found very meaningful. The beauty of its language, the dignity of its tone. While each of his children had their own unique journey with him, each of his grandchildren and each of his great-grandchildren, they all knew his love ran deep, even if it wasn't always spoken. And when it came to this moment, David was very clear. The Hebrew that he did want at his funeral was Shema and Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. And so in honoring that wish, there was an insert. I invite you to take that out. And the words that meant so much to David, words that connect us, that reach across time, across generation, across tradition, words that affirm the oneness of all. I invite you to join me in chanting Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. I did not have the honor to spend as much time with the judge as others, but I heard this weekend many great and many heartfelt stories. And I have known the Orlansky family, both from being in this community and from NIFTY, from being an advisor and going to NIFTY events and having spent time with the grandkids. And the thing that I see the most is the dedication that he had is present in every single one of you. And before we started, Linda and Larry talked with me, and we talked about the last few years and how much David, Steve, you and Beth have taken care of David. And that speaks again of the dedication that he had. It has to be done, and so it's done. And so I want to leave you with the strength that he had, the compassion to see the world and to say it can be different. The love for family and the love to hold each other accountable. Those are the things that made him strong. I invite Rabbi Kassoff to come and to lead us in El Male Rachamim,
but only in English.
But only in English.
Okay, just to be clear. God of abundant mercy, God Most High, May the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with all the holy and pure whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold him close to you forever, so that his soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May he find a home with you, and may he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen.
Amen. Each of us has a name given by God and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and by our smile, and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by our sins and given by our longing. Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. Each of us has a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. Each of us has a name given by the sea and given by our death. For those who feel moved to continue with us, the interment will take place at Beth Israel Cemetery on State Street. This final part of the journey is a quiet moment of return, of laying to rest with love and reverence. Whether you join us there in person or hold the family in your heart from afar, your presence here today has been a true blessing. And as a word of order for those who are following to the cemetery, the car line will be at the front of the building. And for those of you who are needing to return, the back driveway is open. So if you need to drive around the building, you may do that as well. Just a reminder afterwards, if anyone would like to stop by Steve and Beth Orlansky's house, they have invited you to stop by after the cemetery if you're not able to make it to the cemetery.